No, I'm just about finished.
What's up for today?
Well, today you're going to learn about reinforcement. You've used it already, but probably didn't know it. I'll tell you something about it, we'll go see it in use, and then you'll have a chance to try it out.
What is reinforcement?
It's a technique to use when you want a person to do something again. Reinforcement is a relationship between a prompting event, the learner's target behavior, and a pleasurable outcome for the learner. The pleasurable outcome is called the reinforcer. Let me give you a couple of simple examples. First is a gumball machine. You know how they work. You see one in a grocery store, you put in a coin, turn the handle, and a piece of gum falls out. Now you tell me, what's the reinforcer?
Well, a reinforcer is a pleasurable outcome, so it's the gumball.
Exactly. What's the target behavior?
Putting in a coin and turning the handle?
Right. Most children learn the reinforcement relationship quickly, after one try.
You said something about prompting.
What event prompts the child to put a coin into the gumball machine in the first place?
Seeing the gumball machine, I suppose.
So the sequence is prompting event, see the gumball machine, target behavior, put the coin in and turn the handle, reinforcer, get a gumball.
Well, that's profitable for the owner of the gumball machine.
The slot machine is even more profitable, and it operates on the principle of reinforcement too. What's the prompting event?
Seeing a slot machine.
What's the target behavior?
Putting in money and pulling down the handle.
Yes, and what's the reinforcer?
The money it pays off.
You've got it. There's a reinforcing relationship between seeing a slot machine, the act of putting in money and pulling down the handle, and getting a payoff.
But you always get a gumball with a gumball machine. You don't always win with a slot machine.
That's another aspect of reinforcement. The gumball machine pays off every time. That's called continuous reinforcement. The slot machine pays off only once in a while. That's called intermittent reinforcement. It's easier to establish a reinforcement relationship using continuous reinforcement, but the behavior is much more lasting with intermittent reinforcement.
Why is that?
Go back to the examples. With the gumball machine, you know you get reinforced every time you put in money and turn the handle. If you don't get a gumball, you know there's something wrong and call the manager. With the slot machine, you don't expect to get paid off every time. You know it reinforces you after only some of the times you play. So if the slot machine doesn't pay off this time, you'll play it again and again, expecting a payoff eventually. The intermittent reinforcement of the slot machine sets you up to put money in several times before you're reinforced. That's what makes slot machines so profitable. You know, many of life's reinforcers are intermittent, like getting paid at the end of the week rather than at the end of each day. Catching fish.
How does this apply to teaching?
Good teachers use reinforcement like gumball and slot machines. They prompt the person and then give valuable feedback right after the person does something they'd like him to do again.
Well, could you give the reinforcer first?
No. Think of the gumball machine. The target behavior is putting in a coin and turning the handle. The reinforcer is the gumball. If you get the gumball first, why put the coin in?
So you prompt the person, wait for the target behavior, and then give the reinforcer, right?
You've got it. And you reinforce as soon as possible after the target behavior. Let's go visit Mike Simpson and see some language training.
Okay.
This is George.
Hi, George.
George is learning to identify pictures. I name a picture, and George, if George finds it, I give him a raisin. Okay. Are you ready, George?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you spread them out for me? Spread them out. Okay. Can you find pants? Good, George, you found it.
Bath.
Okay, good job. George, where's soap? Good, George. You found soap. All right.
What do you do if George misses one?
I help him find the right one, and then we do it again. Where is table? Look, George, here's table. Table. Okay. George, find table. Good, you found table. All right. George, where's comb?
Go.
Looking for comb. Look, George, here's comb. Comb. Okay? We'll mix them up. Okay. George, where's comb? Find comb. Good. You found comb. Good job.
Let's talk about the reinforcement relationship we just saw. What was the prompting event?
Mike saying the name of a picture.
What was the target behavior?
Well, the target behavior was George correctly selecting the picture, and the reinforcer was the raisin.
And when did Mike reinforce George?
Right after George selected the correct picture. He was using continuous reinforcement, wasn't he?
Yes. He gave George a raisin each time George was correct. What about when George was incorrect?
Mike corrected him.
Great. What are some things you think might be reinforcing?
Oh, food, money.
Food is a natural reinforcer. Money is a learned reinforcer.
What's the difference?
Well, natural reinforcers correspond to wired-in needs, like hunger, thirst, avoiding pain. Examples might be a bite of cheese, a drink of juice, stopping the dentist drill. You remember the raisin that Mike used with George? That was a natural reinforcer. Something that's not naturally reinforcing becomes reinforcing if it's paired often enough with a natural reinforcer. We learn the value of money because it buys natural reinforcers like food and drink. Tokens get you tasty snacks. What I'd like to do is show you a token reinforcement program. Each person carries a reinforcement card, and the card gets punched with a hole in it each time the person does a target behavior. That punch is a kind of token. Lyman, can I show Becky your reinforcement card? Yeah. Thank you. Oh, Lyman, you're doing a real good job. You've got several punches here. You want to see Becky?
Yeah. The punches are learned reinforcers.
Yes. At the end of the day, Lyman turns in his card. Don't you, Lyman? If there are enough punches on the card, he gets a can of soda or some popcorn.
And the popcorn and soda are natural reinforcers.
Right. And by pairing the reinforcement card and the natural reinforcers, Lyman has come to value card punches. Thanks, Lyman. Here's your card. Although we all have the same wired-in needs, the same things aren't reinforcing to everyone.
Oh, no?
No. A reinforcer is more than something a person wants. It's something the person will work for. And every person is different. We have different tastes. Lyman likes popcorn and soda. George likes raisins. I like anchovies, and most people hate them.
How can I tell what's reinforcing to a person?
Well, according to David Premack's principle, you know something is reinforcing when the behavior it immediately follows happens more often than it did before. So you need to do what's called a reinforcer survey. First, you identify some potential reinforcers.
Well, how do I do that?
Start by observing what a person likes to do, what snacks the person likes to eat, whether the person likes to get their photo taken or go to their room. Then you take a baseline. Find out how often the target behavior occurs without reinforcement.
Okay.
Next, you find out how often the target behavior occurs when it's followed by your potential reinforcers.
If the rate of the target behavior increases, it's a genuine reinforcer.
Exactly. If you're guessing at what is reinforcing without doing a reinforcer survey, you may be wasting your time. Well, Becky, are you ready to do some teaching using reinforcement?
You bet.
David is learning to match objects to pictures. Prompt David by showing him a picture and saying its name. Reinforce David when he correctly picks the object by telling him he did a good job and shaking his hand.
David, show me the toothbrush. This is the toothbrush, David, right here. This is it.
Okay, now ask him again.
Now, let's do it again. Show me the toothbrush, David. Good job. Thank you. That's the toothbrush.
Excellent.
David, show me the cookies. Good. That's the cookies. Good job. David, show me the sock. Good. Very good. Thank you.
Well, you both did a really excellent job. Thanks. Becky, let's review what you did with David. What was the prompting event?
Holding the picture and asking him to show me the object.
What was the target behavior?
David pointing to the correct object.
And what was the reinforcer?
Telling David he did a good job.
Unknowingly, you can reinforce a person for a behavior you don't want to increase.
How?
Now, this point is very important. Some things that we don't think are reinforcers actually are, like negative attention or avoiding completing a task.
Well, what's negative attention?
Well, suppose the client is at work. They pocket something, and when you find out, you give them a lecture on honesty. They do nearly the same thing the next day. Attention is reinforcing for most people. Your honesty lecture may have been the most attention that person got that day, but it was negative attention because it was attention for something the person did that was inappropriate.
Oh, so my negative attention can make it more likely that the undesirable behavior will happen again?
If the only way the person gets reinforced is to do something negative, you can bet your boots he's going to do it.
Suppose you ask a person to do something they don't want to do, like wash the dishes. The person complains of a headache, and you say, "Okay, don't do the dishes." Then you notice that the person is complaining of a headache whenever you ask them to do something. What happened?
Well, by letting the person avoid washing dishes, I reinforce complaining of headaches.
Right. And it happens all the time. Avoiding the task can be a pleasurable outcome.
Well, does that mean I should never give negative attention or let a person out of a task?
You have to use your judgment. If you don't give positive attention, people will try to get your negative attention. If there's nothing pleasurable about doing a task, people will look for ways out of the task.
Becky, let's summarize what you've learned about reinforcement. First of all, it's a relationship among three events.
A prompting event, target behavior, and a reinforcer.
Reinforcement means going from a less preferred to a more preferred state of affairs.
The reinforcer is a pleasurable outcome.
When do you use reinforcement?
Anytime you want a target behavior to occur again.
When do you give the reinforcer?
As soon as possible after the target behavior.
Used correctly, reinforcement increases appropriate behaviors.
An overemphasis on other forms of discipline, like punishment, can lead to situations where you risk increasing inappropriate behaviors.
Like with negative attention?
Right. We try to replace inappropriate behaviors by teaching more appropriate ones. And that means using reinforcement.